something you've forgotten too, Ralph. You seem to have forgotten that I am a woman.
Not gonna do you any good, Norton. Just remember that. It'll do you no good.
It wasn't just a sitcom. It was a revolution in a cramped Brooklyn apartment. But behind the laughs and the threats to send Alice to the moon, nothing was what it seemed. The star refused to rehearse. The set was smaller than a prison cell. And one actor, he wasn't even supposed to be there. These are 20 weird facts about the Honeymooners. Number 20, the apartment was impossibly small.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I haven't had a day off.
The crammed-in apartment looked cozy on screen, but in reality, it was a claustrophobic nightmare. The entire set measured just 20 by 30 feet, roughly the size of a modern studio apartment. But here's the twist. It had to accommodate a full camera crew, lighting equipment, sound technicians, and 4 actors moving around simultaneously. Jackie Gleason insisted on this cramped design because he wanted authenticity. He'd grown up poor in Brooklyn, knew what real tenement life felt like, and refused to glamorize it. The walls were deliberately close, the furniture worn and mismatched, the paint peeling in places. During filming, actors constantly bumped into furniture, crew members squeezed against walls, and the heat from the stage lights turned the space into an oven. Art Carney later admitted he developed a technique of taking shallow breaths between lines just to cope with the stuffiness. That authentic working-class struggle audiences connected with, it wasn't just acting, it was survival. Number 19, Gleason refused to rehearse.
You said everybody does it. I don't know anybody does the mambo. I don't. It's not many wives who want to give their husband something.
Oh, I don't know, Ralph.
Most television actors spent days memorizing scripts and blocking scenes. Jackie Gleason did neither. He had a photographic memory and an ego to match, reading scripts once, sometimes twice, then showing up on shoot day completely unprepared for technical rehearsals. His reasoning was pure Gleason. Over-rehearsing killed spontaneity, made performances stale, robbed comedy of its edge. The crew was terrified. Audrey Meadows and Art Carney adapted by staying loose, ready for anything, treating every take like opening night. Joyce Randolph just held on for dear life, but Gleason's method had an unintended consequence. It forced everyone to stay sharp, to react genuinely, to listen instead of reciting. Watch any episode closely and you'll see it. The timing feels alive, dangerous even. Meadows sometimes didn't know what Gleason would do next, so her reactions were real. Carney would improvise back, creating magic in the moment. What looked like perfect blocking was actually controlled chaos. And that's exactly what Gleason wanted. Because in his mind, Ralph Kramden wasn't supposed to be polished. He was supposed to be real. Number 18, the show only lasted 1 season.
With the stars Art Carney, Audrey...
She's upstairs. Hey, she's upstairs. She's coming back. No, she's coming back. Record and wait.
It seems impossible. The Honeymooners is embedded in American culture, referenced endlessly, considered one of the greatest sitcoms ever made. But the classic 39 episodes everyone remembers, they all aired in a single season, from 1955 to 1956. That's it. 1 year, then gone. The reason wasn't ratings or quality, it was exhaustion and strategy. Gleason was simultaneously starring in The Jackie Gleason Show, a variety program where the Honeymooners originally appeared as sketches. When CBS offered him a standalone sitcom deal, he took it, but quickly realized the workload was crushing. Filming a weekly half-hour sitcom while maintaining his variety show schedule left him drained, irritable, creatively spent. So after 39 episodes, he made a shocking decision. He canceled it himself, walking away from guaranteed money and ratings success because he refused to compromise quality for quantity. The network was stunned. The audience were devastated, but Gleason never regretted it. He later said he'd rather be remembered for 39 great episodes than 200 mediocre ones. And he was right. Those 39 became immortal. Number 17. Audrey Meadows sabotaged her own audition.
No, it isn't. You have the wrong number. All right, Ralph.
When casting began for Alice Kramden, Audrey Meadows was nowhere near the top of the list. She was young, glamorous, a former model with perfect makeup and styled hair. Everything Alice Kramden wasn't. The producers wanted someone older, more worn down by life. Someone who looked like they'd actually lived in that cramped Brooklyn apartment for 15 years. Meadows knew this, So she went home and plotted. On the morning of her audition, she didn't style her hair, didn't put on makeup, wore her oldest house dress and scuffed slippers. Then she had a photographer friend come to her apartment at dawn and take pictures of her looking exhausted, angry, defeated. She sent those photos to Gleason's team with a note saying, "This is what I really look like in the morning." Gleason took one look and called her immediately. He didn't even need to see her audition. The woman in those photos was Alice. When Meadows showed up to read, she wore the same outfit, kept the same tired expression, delivered lines with the perfect mix of sarcasm and exhausted love. She got the part on the spot. Number 16, Art Carney almost wasn't Ed Norton.
Dum-de-dum-dum. You can't discourage me, Alice. I don't care if you've got any confidence.
Ed Norton is inseparable from the Honeymooners now, but Art Carney almost didn't play him. During early casting, Gleason wanted someone bigger, louder, more physical. Carney was quiet, thoughtful, and recovering from serious injuries sustained during World War II. He'd been hit by shrapnel at Normandy, left with a permanent limp and chronic pain that he hid behind perfect comic timing. When he auditioned for Norton, he didn't try to compete with Gleason's energy. He complemented it. Where Ralph was explosive, Norton was loose. Where Ralph shouted, Norton mumbled. Where Ralph stomped, Norton glided. Gleason watched Carney's reading and immediately understood. Norton wasn't Ralph's equal. He was Ralph's opposite, his pressure valve, his mirror showing him his own absurdity. Carney brought something else too, genuine sweetness. Norton wasn't stupid. He was childlike, optimistic, loyal to a fault. Every harebrained scheme Ralph cooked up, Norton believed in completely. Not because he was dumb, but because he loved his friend enough to suspend disbelief. That chemistry between Gleason and Carney became the soul of the show. Two men, opposite in every way, bound together by friendship and weekly disasters. Number 15. The famous catchphrase was born from real anger.
One of these days, pow, right in the kiss.
Bang, zoom, straight to the moon became one of television's most iconic lines. But it started as something darker. In the early days of developing Ralph's character, Gleason drew from his own childhood, watching his father rage through their Brooklyn apartment, frustrated by poverty, by dead-end jobs, by dreams that never materialized. Gleason's father never hit his mother, but he threatened, blustered, threw words like punches. Young Jackie absorbed all of it. Decades later, when crafting Ralph Cramden, Gleason channeled that same impotent rage but filtered it through comedy. Ralph's threats were grandiose, absurd, physically impossible. He'd never actually hit Alice, never even came close. But the anger was real, the frustration authentic, the sense of a man trapped by circumstances beyond his control. What made it funny was the context. Ralph would scream about sending Alice to the moon after she'd outsmarted him, exposed his latest scheme, or simply told him the truth he didn't want to hear. He was never the victim. He was the fool, and Alice knew she was safe, could stand there with arms crossed, waiting for him to finish his tantrum. The line became beloved because underneath the bluster, everyone knew Ralph was harmless, just a big kid throwing a fit. Number 14. They filmed before a live audience without retakes.
Just to prove that they can get away with it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Just get rid of this.
19 points don't win this game. 21 points win the game. I just let you...
Most sitcoms in the 50s used laugh tracks or filmed scenes multiple times. The Honeymooners did neither. Every episode was performed live before a studio audience with multiple cameras rolling simultaneously, just like a stage play. No stops, no retakes, no safety net. If someone flubbed a line, they kept going. If a prop broke, they improvised around it. If Gleason forgot what came next, he'd ad-lib until his photographic memory kicked back in. This approach created electric tension. The audience knew they were watching something real, something that could go wrong at any second. And sometimes it did. Gleason once accidentally knocked over a lamp, kicked it aside without breaking character, and the audience roared. Carney forgot an entrance, wandered on late, and Norton's befuddled expression made it funnier. These weren't mistakes. They were proof of life, evidence that what viewers were seeing wasn't manufactured perfection, but four talented performers working without a net. The laughter on the soundtrack is genuine because those people in the studio weren't watching television. They were watching theater, raw and immediate, where anything could happen and usually did. Number 13. Joyce Randolph was the forgotten honeymooner.
Tomorrow morning, I'm going to serve sandwiches, ice cream, coffee, punch, potato chips, peanuts.
The first toast to my wife, who finally has found a place.
While Gleason, Meadows, and Carney became household names, Joyce Randolph quietly disappeared. She played Trixie Norton, Ed's wife, with warmth and comic timing, but unlike her castmates, she never broke through to stardom. It wasn't lack of talent, it was lack of opportunity. Trixie appeared in far fewer episodes than the others, often relegated to brief scenes or cutaway reactions. Randolph later admitted feeling like the fourth wheel, invited to the party, but not really part of the conversation. When the show ended, Gleason moved on to other projects, Meadows built a successful career, Carney won multiple Emmys. Randolph got occasional guest spots, then faded from show business entirely, raising her family in quiet obscurity. For decades, she was the honeymooner nobody remembered, rarely invited to reunions, barely mentioned in retrospectives. Then something strange happened. In the 2000s, when nostalgia for classic television surged, fans rediscovered her. They watched old episodes, noticed her subtle work, appreciated her grounded presence. Randolph lived long enough to see herself appreciated, passing away in 2013 at age 99. Finally, after 60 years, Trixie got her due. Number 12, the set was cursed by budget constraints.
For the last time, Alice, I'm telling you, I'm going for the $99,000 question.
CBS gave the Honeymooners a modest budget, nothing like the lavish productions of today. This meant corners were cut everywhere. The apartment set was built from cheap materials, the furniture came from thrift stores. The kitchen appliances were non-functional props painted to look real. Nothing worked properly. The icebox door wouldn't stay closed, requiring stagehands to hold it between takes. The table wobbled so badly, Meadows had to steady it with her knee during dinner scenes. The window looking out onto the fire escape was just painted canvas, and under hot studio lights, the paint would sometimes run, creating surreal melting backgrounds nobody in the audience noticed, but drove the crew insane. Costume budgets were equally tight. Gleason wore the same bus driver uniform episode after episode, Meadows had 3 house dresses she rotated, and Carney's vest literally fell apart during filming once, requiring emergency sewing backstage. But these limitations forced creativity. The show couldn't rely on spectacle or elaborate sets. It had to be funny, had to find humor in character and dialogue and situation. That poverty, real and financial, made the Honeymooners sharper, leaner, and ultimately more timeless than richer shows that looked dated within years. Number 11. Gleason's drinking was an open secret.
Stay out. You remember that?
Go out.
Sorry.
Gentleman is Mr. Crandall.
Oh, no, you don't. Before I tell you which one of me is...
Jackie Gleason loved alcohol. Not socially, not occasionally, constantly. He'd show up to rehearsals with a drink, film with a drink nearby, leave the studio to drink more. His preferred poison was scotch, consumed in quantities that would hospitalize most people, but Gleason seemed immune. Cast and crew knew, joked about it, worked around it. Some days he was brilliant, sharper than ever, improvising genius-level comedy while technically intoxicated. Other days he was mean, cutting, his humor tipping from playful to cruel. Audrey Meadows learned to read his moods, knowing within seconds whether she'd get charming Jackie or monster Jackie. Art Carney, himself a recovering alcoholic, watched with concern but said nothing. The network pretended not to notice because ratings were too good to risk. What's remarkable is how little it showed on screen. Watch The Honeymooners, and you'd never know Gleason was drinking. His timing stayed perfect, his physical comedy precise, his delivery flawless. But behind the scenes, it was taking a toll, contributing to the show's short run and Gleason's eventual health problems. Years later, he'd joke about it, minimize it, act like it was all part of the legend, but for those who worked with him, it wasn't funny, it was exhausting. Number 10. The lost episodes were literally lost for decades.
You get this, Ralph, and get it straight. When you're on that fishing trip...
Calling all space rangers, it's time to blast off with Captain...
In 1976, a man named Albert J. Precht was cleaning out his garage in Florida when he stumbled across something extraordinary. Boxes and boxes of kinescope recordings, old film transfers of television broadcasts that had been gathering dust for 20 years. He almost threw them out. Instead, he checked one tape, and discovered he was holding episodes of The Honeymooners that nobody knew existed. Not the famous 39 from the classic season, but sketches from The Jackie Gleason Show, early versions where The Honeymooners was just one segment among many. There were 75 of them, filmed between 1952 and 1957, considered lost forever because CBS hadn't bothered to save them. Back then, networks didn't see value in old content. They'd record over tapes, throw out kinescopes, erase history to save storage space. Gleason himself had rescued these copies, storing them in various locations, then apparently forgetting where. When news broke about the discovery, Honeymooners fans went wild. These weren't just historical curiosities. They were raw, unpolished versions of characters that would become iconic, showing Ralph and Alice and Ed and Trixie evolving, finding their voices, testing material that would later be refined. Gleason immediately began preparing them for release, and in 1985, they finally aired on Showtime. Audiences got to see The Honeymooners before it was The Honeymooners, rougher, stranger, sometimes darker. It was like finding a lost Shakespeare folio in an attic, except this folio featured a bus driver threatening to punch his wife to the moon. Number 9. Audrey Meadows was paid less than everyone.
So I washed all the windows. Then, Ralph, I went out and I did the mopping.
Despite being second billed, despite appearing in every episode, despite creating one of television's most memorable female characters, Audrey Meadows made significantly less money than her male co-stars. Gleason earned $15,000 per episode, an astronomical sum in the 50s. Art Carney pulled in several thousand. Meadows got $750 per episode. For a full season's work, she earned less than Gleason made in 2 episodes. The disparity wasn't unique to The Honeymooners. It was standard practice across Hollywood, but that didn't make it less insulting. Meadows knew her worth, knew she was carrying half the show, but studios operated on rigid gender hierarchies that treated women as supporting players regardless of talent or screen time. She couldn't negotiate higher wages without risking the role entirely, so she stayed quiet and cashed smaller checks, while Gleason bought mansions and Cadillacs. Decades later, she discussed this injustice with remarkable grace, saying she understood the era's limitations, but wished she'd fought harder. What's remarkable is how this inequality affected her performance. Not at all. Alice Cramden was strong, sharp, never diminished by her husband's bluster. Meadows channeled her real-life frustration into fictional dignity. Every time Alice outsmarted Ralph, every time she stood her ground, every time she refused to be cowed, Meadows was making a statement. She may have been underpaid, but she was never outperformed. And Ralph Cramden, for all his shouting, never really stood a chance against his wife. Neither did Jackie Gleason against Audrey Meadows. Number 8. The show was almost called The Lovers.
Dusty out in that hall. Say hurricane! Hurricane!
Before The Honeymooners existed, before Ralph and Alice became Ralph and Alice, Jackie Gleason was developing a completely different concept. He wanted to call it The Lovers, a domestic comedy focused on newlyweds navigating married life with optimism and romance. CBS hated it. They thought the name was too soft, too sentimental, too far from Gleason's established brand of loud, physical comedy. Network executives pushed for something working class, something grounded in real American struggle. Gleason resisted at first, attached to his original vision of a show about people who actually liked each other. But his writing team, particularly Leonard Stern and Sidney Zelinka, convinced him that conflict was funnier than contentment, that struggle revealed character better than happiness. The shift from The Lovers to The Honeymooners represented more than a title change. It was a philosophical transformation from a show about romance to a show about survival. Ralph and Alice weren't newlyweds dreaming of the future. They were veterans of 15 years together, their illusions long since shattered, their relationship defined by exasperation and exhausted affection. Gleason later admitted the change saved the show because nobody wants to watch people in love. They want to watch people who stay together despite everything. That's relatable. That's real. That's why generations of married couples saw themselves in the Cramdens, not because they threatened each other, but because underneath the fighting, something deeper kept them together. Something stronger than romance. Something like real love. Number 7. Art Carney's physical comedy was born from war injuries.
Shirts. What's the difference anyway?
What's the difference? I'll show you what the difference is, Alice.
Ed Norton's distinctive walk, that loose-limbed shuffle that made him look like a puppet whose strings were slightly too slack, wasn't a character choice. It was Art Carney hiding a war injury. At Normandy in 1944, Carney took shrapnel to his right leg that shattered bone and damaged nerves. He spent months in hospitals, underwent multiple surgeries, and walked with a pronounced limp for the rest of his life. When he returned to acting, he faced a choice: let the injury limit his roles or incorporate it into his performances. He chose incorporation, developing a physical style that turned disability into artistry. Norton's walk became iconic precisely because it was unusual, memorable, unlike anyone else on television. But Carney paid for it with constant pain. Standing for long periods aggravated his injuries, and the long shoots required for the Honeymooners often left him barely able to walk by day's end. He never complained, never asked for accommodations. He'd finish filming, limp to his dressing room, and sit with his leg elevated until he could move again. Gleason knew about the pain and sometimes adjusted blocking to give Carney breaks, but Carney always pushed through, determined not to let his injury define his career. The irony is that the injury gave him Norton, that shuffling walk, that loose physicality, that sense of a man not quite connected to the ground. It all came from damaged nerves and shattered bone. What audiences saw as brilliant character work was actually Carney transforming trauma into comedy, making beauty from brokenness. Veterans watching recognized something in Norton, even if they couldn't name it. He moved like someone who'd been hurt and learned to keep going anyway. Number 6, the kitchen table became television's most famous prop.
Oh, no thanks, Ralph. I'm going to bed.
Going to bed?
Yeah, and, Alice? Rick? Yeah, you all set to go?
Yeah, I'm waiting for my brother-in-law. He's good.
It was just a table, cheap, scarred, wobbling on uneven legs, bought from a thrift store for probably $5. But over the course of 39 episodes, that kitchen table became more important than any character. It was where Ralph hatched his schemes, where Alice served dinner with skeptical commentary, where Ed and Ralph played cards and argued about nothing, where life happened in all its small, repetitive, beautiful monotony. The table appeared in almost every scene, always center frame, always the gravitational center of the Cramden universe. Prop masters learned to love and hate it. The uneven legs required constant adjustment with folded paper. The surface was so scarred, they had to position plates and props carefully to hide the worst damage. During particularly physical scenes, Gleason would pound the table for emphasis, and the whole thing would shake like it might collapse. But it never did. It survived 39 episodes of abuse, thousands of pounds of dishes, countless scripts slapped down dramatically, and Gleason's considerable weight when he'd occasionally sit on it. After the show ended, the table disappeared. Nobody thought to preserve it. Nobody considered it valuable. It was just a prop, hauled off to storage, probably destroyed or sold. Decades later, Honeymooners fans searched for it obsessively, offering rewards, chasing rumors, hoping to find this piece of television history. It never turned up. That table, which appeared on screen more than almost anything else in 1950s television, simply vanished, lost to time like most things from that era. But its memory remained, embedded in millions of minds as the symbolic heart of working-class domestic life, where dreams were discussed and usually defeated, but love somehow survived anyway. Number 5, Gleason hated television and wanted to quit constantly.
What's in it?
I don't know. It can't be anything of value. They would have claimed it. Look, forget it.
Jackie Gleason never loved television. He saw it as a stepping stone, a way to stay visible while waiting for movie stardom that never quite materialized. He called television chewing gum for the eyes, disposable entertainment that couldn't match the artistry of film or the immediacy of stage performance. Throughout the Honeymooners run, he talked constantly about quitting, about returning to Broadway, about taking movie roles that would showcase his range beyond Ralph Cramden. CBS executives lived in constant fear that Gleason would walk away mid-season, leaving them with a hit show but no star. They weren't wrong to worry. Gleason's contract included unusual flexibility, clauses that let him leave on short notice, proof that even at the show's peak, he had one foot out the door. His ambivalence showed in strange ways. Some days he'd elevate the material with inspired improvisation, performing like television was the most important medium in the world. Other days he'd mail it in, delivering lines mechanically, visibly bored, counting minutes until wrap. The cast learned to navigate his moods, but the uncertainty poisoned the atmosphere. Everyone knew the show existed at Gleason's whim, could end whenever he decided he'd had enough. And that's exactly what happened. After 39 episodes, with ratings strong and CBS begging for more seasons, Gleason simply walked away. Not because the show was failing, but because he had succeeded enough to prove his point and now wanted something else. The move baffled executives, frustrated fans, and probably saved the show's legacy. By ending early, the Honeymooners never declined, never jumped the shark, never became a parody of itself. Gleason's disinterest in television ironically preserved his greatest television achievement. Number 4. The apartment had no bathroom.
Good morning, ladies. Can I ask you some questions, please? Excuse me, sir. My name is Dick Preston.
What's this peasant stuff?
I'll tell you what it is, Alice. He's got something to tell you, and you better listen,
Look closely at the Cramden apartment, and you'll notice something strange. There's a kitchen, a main room, maybe a bedroom mentioned occasionally, but no bathroom. Not visible, not referenced, not acknowledged. For a show obsessed with working-class realism, this was a bizarre omission. Real Brooklyn tenements had bathrooms, usually tiny, often shared, always problematic. But the Honeymooners pretended they didn't exist. The reason was pure censorship. 50s television standards forbade showing toilets on screen, considered them too crude, too vulgar, too bedeily for family viewing. Even married couples couldn't be shown sharing a bed. They needed separate twins. Bathrooms represented physical reality that network censors wanted eliminated from the sanitized world of early television. So, the Cramdens simply didn't have one, or rather, they had one the audience never saw and characters never mentioned. This created weird moments. Ralph would come home dirty from work and somehow be clean in the next scene with no explanation. Alice would be cooking dinner, then suddenly appear in different clothes without leaving the apartment. Where did these transformations happen? In the phantom bathroom that existed but couldn't be acknowledged. Modern viewers sometimes notice this absence and find it surreal, like the apartment exists in some bizarre dimension where human bodily needs simply don't apply. But 50s audiences barely registered it because they'd been trained not to expect realism in certain areas. Television could show poverty, could show struggling, could show couples fighting, but it couldn't show a toilet. That was the line. So, the Honeymooners, groundbreaking in so many ways, carefully tiptoed around the bathroom issue for 39 episodes, pretending that Ralph and Alice simply never needed to use one. Number 3, Meadows and Gleason barely spoke off camera.
Aren't they a nice couple, Ralph?
Yeah, they certainly are. I gotta admit.
Present under there.
You got yours under there, too?
Yes.
On screen, Ralph and Alice were intimately connected, their relationship defined by 15 years of shared history. Off-screen, Jackie Gleason and Audrey Meadows were professional strangers who barely spoke except when cameras rolled. It wasn't hatred or personal animosity, they simply existed in different universes. Gleason surrounded himself with drinking buddies, yes men, hangers-on who laughed at his jokes and enabled his excesses. He socialized constantly, throwing parties, holding court, demanding attention. Meadows had none of this. She showed up, did her job brilliantly, then went home to her actual life, far from the chaos Gleason cultivated. She found him exhausting, unpredictable, sometimes cruel in ways that tested her professionalism. He found her distant, unwilling to participate in the social dynamics he considered essential to the show's success. So they maintained a careful separation, cordial on set, invisible to each other everywhere else. Art Carney served as a bridge, friendly with both, translating when necessary, smoothing tensions before they became conflicts. But Gleason and Meadows never became friends, never grew close, never developed the relationship their characters suggested they would have. Years later, after Gleason's death, Meadows spoke about him with respect but not affection. She acknowledged his genius while also noting his flaws, his drinking, his ego, his inability to see people as anything other than supporting players in his personal drama. She never regretted working with him, but she also never missed him. Their partnership was purely professional, a case where two talented people created something beautiful together while remaining fundamentally separate, proving that great art doesn't require great friendship, just great performance. Number 2, CBS almost canceled the show after 6 episodes.
Sometime somebody comes in, orders a family dinner, then I'm completely thrown. I don't ever know what.
The Honeymooners premiered strong, but quickly faced unexpected competition. NBC counter-programmed with a variety show featuring established stars, and audience numbers started sliding. By episode 6, CBS executives were panicking. The ratings weren't disastrous, but they weren't justifying the investment either. Internal memos from late 1955 show network executives debating whether to cut their losses, cancel the show, and replace it with something cheaper and safer. Jackie Gleason heard the rumors and went ballistic. He threatened to quit CBS entirely, taking his variety show with him, leveraging his considerable power to keep the Honeymooners alive. The network blinked first, agreeing to give the show more time, more promotion, more prime placement. And gradually, ratings stabilized, then climbed. By mid-season, the Honeymooners was performing well enough to justify renewal conversations. But Gleason remembered how quickly CBS had been willing to abandon his vision, and that betrayal contributed to his decision to end the show after just one season. He'd fought to keep it alive, succeeded, then walked away on his own terms before the network could control his fate. It was a power move, vintage Gleason, asserting dominance even as he was surrendering success. CBS executives were left stunned, holding a hit show with no star and no path forward. They had almost canceled the Honeymooners when it was still struggling. Gleason canceled it when it was thriving, proving that in television, as in life, timing is everything, and control matters more than success. The irony is that those early struggles, that near cancellation, helped create the show's legacy. 39 episodes felt like lightning in a bottle, precisely because it ended before exhaustion set in. Number 1. Ralph Cramden was based on Gleason's abusive father.
Because a man's home is his castle. And in that castle, you're the king. You're old.
Look, this is grown enough. 35%.
The most disturbing secret about the Honeymooners isn't a behind-the-scenes story. It's the dark foundation underneath all the laughter. Ralph Cramden, lovable loudmouth dreamer, was directly based on Jackie Gleason's father, who was none of those things. Gleason Sr. was a violent alcoholic who terrorized his family. Trapped by poverty and failures, he blamed on everyone else. He'd explode in rage, throw furniture, scream threats that sometimes became actions. Young Jackie watched his mother endure this abuse for years before his father finally abandoned the family, entirely when Jackie was 9. That desertion destroyed their already fragile finances and contributed to his mother's early death. Gleason carried these traumas his entire life, and when he created Ralph Cramden, he was exorcising demons by transforming his father from a terrifying figure into a pathetic one. Ralph has his father's rage, his grandiose dreams, his refusal to accept responsibility, his tendency to blame Alice for his failures. But critically, Ralph never follows through on his threats. He bellows about violence, then crumbles, apologizing, admitting Alice was right all along. Gleason was rewriting history, creating the father he wished he'd had. Angry but harmless, frustrated but loving, trapped but trying. Every episode ended with reconciliation, with "Baby, you're the greatest," with Ralph acknowledging his foolishness and Alice forgiving him. This never happened in Gleason's childhood. His father never apologized, never softened, never saw his son as anything more than another disappointment. So, Gleason spent 39 episodes giving Ralph and Alice the relationship he never saw between his parents, transforming personal tragedy into public comedy, making millions laugh at pain he'd spent decades trying to forget.